Alrighty, good afternoon, everyone. I hope everyone's having a wonderful, what is today, Thursday? Thursday afternoon, evening, wherever you're at. Um, Thanks for joining us on our webinar today, How to Make TPE Virtual Work for You. Um, Obviously, we have shifted the ship, and we are going in a new direction. So just to let you all know on who's on with you today, I thought I'd let my other colleagues introduce themselves. So, Kirsten, if you want to kick us off.
Great. Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining us. My name is Kirsten Fox. I am the director of the Placement Exchange, and you've probably received a few emails from me over the course of the past few months. I was looking very forward to seeing all of you in person, but I am glad we can at least connect here virtually, and we'll talk about how we will continue to connect and support you in a more virtual setting. But thanks for taking time out of what I know is a very, very busy time on your campuses to join us.
Hello, everybody. My name is Jacob Maccabee, and I just stepped into my role as the program coordinator for the Placement Exchange on Monday. So this is my fourth day on the job, and I'm very excited to get this thing rolling, and I'm very excited to share this information with you all today.
Aaron, I think you're on mute. No?
Nothing.
Oh, there you are.
Can anyone hear me?
Yeah.
You can hear me now. Okay. Hey, everyone. I'm Erin Mickles, and I serve as the Employer Development Chair, as well as an Associate Director for Student Life at Loyola, Maryland. And so Tim and I are excited to give you all more info as we go virtual.
Yeah. And hi, everyone, again. Tim Layson. I serve on the Employer Development Committee as a committee member, and I also serve as an Associate Director of Residence Life at Santa Clara University in California. And then we also have our interns who are somewhere on this call, and I know that they're probably just listening mostly, but want to give a shout out to them because they've been doing a tremendous amount of work for our committee, and all of our interns have been doing a tremendous amount of work on the TPE, on the general TPE committee since early January. So I wanted to make sure that they were given a shout out. So what we're going to be doing today is talking through what TPE Virtual is going to look like. So Carson's going to lead off the first portion of our presentation today, and then Aaron and I will come in and talking about what the next, what some other next steps are going to be for our process. So Carson, I turn it over to you.
Great. Thank you, Tim. I think if you could, thank you. So most of all, I want to start this, and I mentioned this quickly in my introduction, and actually just really quickly, a quick housekeeping piece. We will take questions and answers throughout the process as well. So you should see a question and answer box on your screen, and feel free to write your question in there. And some of them we'll get to because we already have them planned in. But otherwise, feel free to continue to just write them in the Q&A, and we do want to make sure we get your questions answered. We can see there's quite a few of you on here today because we know this is a pretty confusing process. For those of you that have been coming to TPE for years, you know, one of the best pieces about it is the face-to-face interaction. And so to all of a sudden shift and pivot to a place where we don't have that face-to-face interaction can be confusing in its own right. We also have many people that this was your first TPE to attend as an employer, and it's confusing enough just to go through the TPE process as a recruiter, and now all of a sudden to pivot to a completely new model just has a lot of questions. So we really want to make sure we get those answered. First and foremost, I thank all of you for supporting TPE and the recruitment process. We have about 550 candidates who are still actively searching with the TPE Virtual piece. We obviously have other candidates that are always on our online job board anyway, but we currently have 550 active candidates. And as many of you know, most of these are second semester graduate students or entry-level professionals who may be looking for their second or third position. And unfortunately, as the past month has taken place, we are all trying to kind of live a new normal. And what does that mean? And I know for many of your staffs, you are on the front lines on your campuses. And so I just thank you for kind of taking care of the profession and your students in your campuses, while also knowing that many of you have critical roles you're trying to fill. And that can easily be on the back burner. And so we really want to be here from TPE to support you as much in that process as we can. And so that I also want to say that while TPE Virtual will technically take place between March 25th and March 28th of this year, that does not mean engagement with TPE or the TPE candidates will end on March 28th. And we will continue to engage with both candidates and employers after that as well. I appreciate a little bit of time as we think through how we can continue to best serve you in that process. And we're hoping through today's webinar, we'll also be able to get a little bit of information from you as to how we can best serve you during that process. Because we know everybody is trying to engage in different ways. And the traditional have your first, second, maybe third round interviews on site and bring people to campus for the next round is continually changing. And most campuses are not even thinking about how they can bring people to campus right now to interview. And so TPE wants to continue to help you through that process. And we'll spend a little bit of time later today talking about that. So I just want to thank everyone for being here and kind of understanding as we were in that, do we cancel, do we not cancel, do we launch a new initiative opportunity? And we chose to cancel TPE along with the NASPA annual conference, which was obviously the right decision. We're very cognizant of wanting to still meet everybody's needs. And so we're excited to be able to launch a new opportunity for you today. That being said, we have tried to send out various messages through the employer email. And hopefully you received one earlier this week. And we want to just make sure that we touch on some of those don't miss logistics really quickly. So we have had some of our, as most people know, but if not, TPE serves multiple professional associations, but it is sponsored by NASPA and ACU Hawaii as our two presenting organizations. So we have had about 10 staff members from ACU Hawaii who have been working the front lines of TPE customer service, including an employer concierge program outside of our TPE committee employer concierge. So you should have or will be shortly receiving either a phone call or an email from one of our professional staff colleagues in the ACU Hawaii office to also help make sure that you've received some information, help get some answers from you, help get some answers to you in the process as well. One of the things we're trying to figure out with through this employer concierge process is, are you even continuing your candidate search? We have a candidate webinar this evening with a lot of candidates signed up who, as I mentioned, are pretty nervous given all of the rapid changes that are happening within not only the world, but within higher education. We know there are many of you and possibly many of you on this call that aren't even sure if you're able to continue your search. There are some hiring freezes that are going into place. People are pausing the process, coming back to it maybe in later April or May. We're trying to help figure out a little bit more of that so we can also provide support for our candidates so that as much as our candidates are up to date, that will also help you in your process. So we appreciate you kind of helping to give us some of that information if you do hear from a ACU Hawaii staff member, your employer concierge. So those are kind of the big things there. The refunds, I know a lot of people have some questions about refunds. We're going to go into a refund slide after this. So we're just going to kind of pause on that for a moment. I already referenced the candidate breakdown. We actually still have candidates registering. It's not uncommon for both employers and candidates to register for TPE on-site up until the very last minute. We obviously saw a slowdown when travel restrictions started to go into place. Obviously, COVID-19 responses were going into place. So we expected sort of that, less of an increase than usual. However, we do have candidates that are still searching for jobs, including candidates that I had one reach out to me today that because of their institution and some of this, they have now had to make some cuts to their positions, and now they are a new candidate because they just realized learned they aren't going to have a job next year. So no, we are continuing to have candidates register. So definitely still use the candidate search feature to see as there may be more candidates that you would want to pull from in your recruitment process. Like I said, we have over 550 candidates total that have mentioned to us that they are in the process. For those of you who have been to TPE in past years, you might think that that number is a little bit lower. It is a little bit lower. So it's actually pretty aligned with our number of current graduate students. Graduate students peaked a few years ago in the profession, and there's been some decline there over the past few years. So we're actually following some pretty normal trends. So just wanted to kind of put that out. And there are candidates that are looking for national searches. So we had institutions registered from 47 states, and we had candidates registered from 47 states. So there's definitely a national search with candidates. So didn't want to lose sight of some of the excitement around our candidates as well. I know it's hard to shift to this virtual, but we have some really great candidates who are really excited to meet you, really excited to interview with you, and really excited to continue in your recruitment process. All right, we'll talk about some refunds. So we've tried to put this information out. I know it can be a little bit confusing because there's so much information. So when you registered, whether it was early bird registration, regular registration, or late registration, your registration cost as an employer included some registration fees, a standard table, and a standard job post. As you probably remember, either you or somebody on your team then had the option of upgrading to a premium job post, a premium table, as well as adding on additional job posts, additional tables, and receptions. So obviously, since the on-site piece isn't happening, we wanted to refund any associated registration costs. We also wanted to refund all table orders. So whether it was a premium or a standard, whether you ordered one table or 3 tables, the cost of that table will be refunded to you. If you ordered a reception, the reception cost will also be refunded. If you placed your catering order already through the Austin Convention Center, that will also be refunded for you. If you ordered power or electricity through the Austin Convention Center through your table, that will also be canceled and refunded. So there will be absolutely no costs for any of those. What will not be refunded, and you'll notice the asterisk by job post. So we are not refunding your job post. TPE still has both the online job board and our on-site, and now we have this TPE Virtual. So the job posts are still active on our site for all of those 550 TPE candidates, plus potentially more if you had upgraded to a premium post. It's available to anybody on the public site, all of the details if it's premium. Well, what we did do was adjust everybody's price point to the early bird rate, which was $175 for a standard post or $300 for a premium post. So regardless of if you ordered that job post on kind of October 1st or February 1st, we will adjust the rate to $175 and refund you the difference for a standard. If you had upgraded or purchased an additional premium post for the $300 per post, that is also the early bird rate for premium. So we will adjust and you will pay that least amount of a post, okay? I know that can get a little bit confusing. In addition, all job posts will stay active on the TPE website until April 30th. So there's still 30 more days that job post will be on the website. Our online job post is $175 for only a 30-day post. So that price point for both the on-site event that was canceled and our online are also similar in value with that $175. So we just wanted to explain a little bit about that decision. If you are somebody that knows you have to completely withdraw from the TPE process because you're experiencing a hiring freeze, you can submit a refund request, you can ignore the February 14th deadline. You could submit a refund request for that job post. Again, that is for people that are no longer able to have the position due to hiring freezes. If you are just going to take a pause and then repost it, we can work with you to extend the post if need be. So we can talk with employers on a case-by-case basis. We know most of you have already had your post online and have already received candidates, which is why you've already had the opportunity for your post to get quite a great deal of visibility. And in addition, because I know many of you are probably wondering when you'll get refunded. So all refunds will be processed within 45 days. If you, we just ask for a little bit of patience in this, as you can imagine, because of all of the different early bird, regular, late registration rates and add-ons, many of you may have made 4 different orders for your complete TPE package at 4 different times, for example. So we actually have to go one by one to figure out your actual kind of amount and your refund. So our hope and our goal is to have those refunds processed prior to 45 days. We just wanted to make sure we were allowing ourselves enough time and that was also fair to you. So those are the questions about refunds. I know we will continue to take questions. Yes, they will be directed back to the credit card where the original purchase was made. So one of the reasons why it may take a little bit of time, our system only stores credit card information for a short period of time for your own security. So for many of you who may have made your registration back on October 1st, we might have to reach back out with some folks on our accounting team to get additional information, but we will refund the credit card that the purchase was made on. Yep, great. Okay. Yep, next slide. Okay, I'm gonna take a quick pause here or switch into now, what does TPE Virtual look like? So, you know, I think as many people are learning over the course of the past week, we are able to exist in a virtual world, maybe more than we felt comfortable doing a week ago. Here we are, 4 moderators for this panel, and we are coming from 4 different places, 3 different states, 2 different time zones. So we are going to move everything virtually. What that means for TPE to truly work, we are going to maintain in the new TPE Virtual, we're going to do it on Central Time, right? We know that we are going to have both candidates and employers in East Coast and candidates and employers in Pacific Time and everything in between. So for consistency, we wanted to maintain that Central Time zone. The employer welcome will still happen. It will happen virtually. You will get a link sometime early next week. We will still have a welcome from our NASPA president and our QHY executive director and members of the committee for all employers and candidates, followed by an employer orientation and a candidate orientation, just like we would do if we were face-to-face, but that will take place via technology. So excited for that welcome. We obviously are not going to do a job fair. We were really excited about that new opportunity this year to allow kind of the networking and the chance to mix and mingle and meet and greet. So we'll look at doing that in the future, but that will not take place virtually. And then from Thursday through Saturday, we will still have TPE virtual interviewing. And we encourage you to use the scheduling assistance and use our online scheduling system. I know we have received some questions. Could it start on Wednesday? We aren't going to open it up on Wednesday, in part because the way the system works is when you go to schedule an interview with a candidate, it only shows you the times that both they have available and that you have available. And we were nervous that with all the messaging we're already trying to send out, to have the candidates interview, for them to be able to make sure that they have enough time to go in and block their Wednesday calendar accordingly. We didn't want every time slot to show up for them on Wednesday, and then there could be more confusion for the candidates. In addition, we are still offering the TPE Academy for the candidates, which is where we do some kind of boot camp preparation sessions with them prior to the official start of interviews. And we didn't want to take that experience away for the candidates. And we know that that'll continue to prepare our candidates for their interviews with you as well. So it'll be advantageous to both groups. So our schedule will be Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Our interviews will start in Central Time with a 8:30 a.m. start on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, with an 8 p.m. stop on Thursday, Friday, and a 4 p.m. stop on Saturday. And again, those are Central Times. So we ask you to review your schedule and block any times that you know aren't going to work for you. So if you are in California and you think, ooh, 8:30 is actually 6:30 my time, I really don't want to do an interview that early. Or if you're in Maine and you think, ooh, 8 o'clock at night, that's 9 o'clock my time, that's getting pretty late. We just ask you block off your schedules. We're going to ask the same of the candidates so that availability isn't open for them as a potential match for you, to help alleviate any confusion with people being on different time zones. So we went back into the website and did add central, all interviews take place in Central Time on multiple places. So hopefully both employers and the candidates are able to see that. But we would ask you to just review your schedule to make sure. I see the question about move to 8 a.m. Central Standard Time in the site. That's not available because they don't start until 8:30 in the morning. And that's the way the system was set up. Our times were 8:30 a.m. until 8 p.m. So if they want to move it till 8, you would, or if they want to do any other day or time outside of those blocks, we would just ask you to work with the candidate to set up a time on your own. And you would just need to track it in your own scheduling system. Because the schedule does not open until that 8:30 time slot. Yeah. We have received some questions from employers, especially since you physically won't all be together. You also are most likely working out of your homes. And so how do you in 3, 4, maybe 7 different locations see the information? We ask that you share team login information. So just like we have a generic info at the Placement Exchange account that multiple people have access to, if your account is linked to your personal email and password, hopefully there is no, right, the TPE site should be one that there is no kind of personal information stored. Well, we know there is no personal information stored is what I should say. So we just ask that you share that login information across your team so everybody can log in and see the same schedule that you would see. We ask that you just continue to schedule interviews. Like I said, we have a lot of candidates who are getting pretty nervous that they don't have many interviews scheduled. We know that's because everybody has been really, strapped for time, right? It has been a really different past week. Many of you are trying to figure out how to move students off campus. Many of you are trying to figure out how you do student activities virtually. We recognize that this is not always top of mind for you, but we just do encourage you to continue reaching out to candidates because I think that is their biggest concern. When you are sharing the information with the candidates, and I'll show this in the next slide, what we're asking is for you to use your notes section of your interview schedule. This is the one piece that both candidates and employers see. They cannot see your entire schedule. But when you click on a specific interview, what pops up is visible to both you and the candidate that it's scheduled with. And there's a notes section, and we ask you to put your link or your phone number or however you want the candidate to contact you or to be in touch in those interview details so you can both see it. As you're messaging back and forth with the contact employer, definitely feel free to remind them that it is all Central Time. Like I said, it's on the schedule as Central Time. So hopefully if they log in, they see it that way. But as we're all trying to kind of quickly shift to a very new system, I think the more just double checking and confirming, the better all the way around. So definitely confirm that with the candidates as well. Okay, on the next slide, I have a little bit of information just to quickly show you. So this is, if you're not sure, because maybe you're a first-time employee or it's been a while, or I know we've had some members say, one of my colleagues was sort of taking the lead, but with everything happening on campus, I've now stepped in. So this may look new to you. So when you are logged into your employer dashboard, one of the important things, and we actually ask you to continue to use this for the next couple weeks, because we'll continue to put more information. You can see with what we have on the left, for example, there's a TPE Virtual info guide that has some information. We'll continue to post links in that on-site event links section between now and throughout the remainder of TPE Virtual. When you click on the View, Edit, Schedule button, what is on the right will pop up. So this is just our kind of mock schedule. Wednesday is not, like I said, set up for interviews in the system, but there are still times that, because that was initially when you were coming in to register, to have the welcomes, so there's still access kind of on the schedule. However, you can see on that Thursday from my interview, that was what my interview day looks like as of right now. So that very top orange is my interview. And so if I were then to click on that orange box, just on the next slide, actually the picture on the right will show it's table 2, and you can see it's got the job details. So this would, instead of it saying test position, not a real job, this would be your position, event type interview, your candidate. So this is pretend candidate services. So it might be candidate 1, Frankie DeFranco. I know he's candidate 1, for example. So it might have that candidate number. What's in blue is a hyperlink. So as a reminder, you can then click on that to be able to pull up the candidate information, to have a quick glance at their profile before you go directly into the interview as well. It's just a great place to be able to quickly go and be like, okay, I know I have 12 interviews, remind me about this candidate, so you can see it. It also has kind of that first interview aspect. You can ignore the table number because obviously we are not there. So, but those are already in the system. And then at the bottom is that notes section that I was talking about, which I then blew out and put a little bit bigger there to your left, which says, Zoom link, insert here so candidates can connect. So as long as that's there and you go through your schedule, which I realize can be a little bit, it can take a little bit of time because you may have a lot of interviews, but we also wanted to leave this up to you. I know we've had some questions, and we're going to go in the next slide that Erin's going to talk about as to kind of how do we have those, but we wanted you to figure out what is the technology that's best for you. Some of us are really comfortable on Zoom. Some of us prefer the phone. We know that not all candidates have video cameras. So we would ask you to also, remember that they may say, could we connect by phone, even if you encourage a video interview. We don't want somebody to be at an unfair advantage if they don't have access to video capabilities, for example. But this is where you can put it. And then this way you and your team members can decide who's doing what interview at what time. And you may even want to use different links, right? I might want to use one link because it's my personal link, but I'm on a meeting at 12 for work that I can't miss. And so Jacob's going to do the 12 o'clock interview and use his own link as an example. So this gives you that flexibility to arrange your interviews and how you want to connect. We just ask that you put it in this area so candidates know with kind of one click or one look how they can be in touch with you. Great. And I'll turn it over.
All right, so as Kirsten mentioned, we wanted to give you all some more insight on some online platforms that you could use if you wanted to do interviewing. And so one that I think everyone knows, or a lot of folks know, is Zoom. And so Zoom does have and all of these platforms do have a free layer so that you don't need to pay anything unless you want to go into some more advanced features. I also would say that check with your institutions and determine if you are a school that already has some of these platforms. So I know, for example, Tim's institution uses Zoom, so they already have a Zoom Enterprise account. My institution uses Microsoft Teams, and so we already have access there. So start looking with your institution to see if you already have access to anywhere. But Zoom is one that does video conferencing, has various rooms that you could use, and you can set the meeting ahead of time and then send the link to your candidates, as Kirsten said, in our scheduler. Something new that we found is also something called Jitsi. And Jitsi, you don't need to have an account per se with. You can actually just go into their site and then do some kind of video connecting, video conferencing. That's a newer one, also free video servicing. Nothing that needs to be downloaded for that one. There's Skype, well, Skype for Business. Skype will have the candidates needing to actually download Skype to have those capabilities, but I think a lot of our candidates are used to Skype. Another system is Cisco WebEx. With a lot of the institutions going virtually, Cisco WebEx has expanded their virtual conferencing to now include video conferences where you can have up to 100 participants, and there is no limit on how long your meeting or your video can be. Also Microsoft Teams. So a lot of institutions are now adding Microsoft Teams. I have learned that in Microsoft Teams, you can send a video to, or send a link to anyone who is not on Microsoft Teams. So your candidates don't necessarily need to be members of Microsoft Teams or actually have Microsoft Teams to be able to participate in any videos that you may set up on Microsoft Teams. We then have Google Hangout. And then Uber Conference is also another service where you don't need to download anything. You could go ahead and send the link directly to them, and then they would be able to log in for that video. What I will say with these, similar to what Kirsten said, is that you will have to, ahead of time, set up the meeting and then get the link to be able to share with your candidates. That way you're not having that crossover of, if I'm in an interview, someone else is clicking into the interview midway through the interview.
Yeah, so I'm going to talk a little bit about what candidate communication could look like at this point. If you don't know, those are the familiar faces of our TPE committee on the right-hand side of my screen. I don't know right from left today, so I'm all good. I think at this point, we really want to stress sending consistent and constant messaging to candidates. Also letting them know, like, indicating any HR limitations that you might be experiencing. I know I've heard from other colleagues around the country that they might be in a freeze, or they can only do a certain number because their HR department doesn't necessarily support video conferencing. So whatever those might be, making sure that you're communicating with candidates, because as Kirsten said, they're asking all these other questions about how are these interviews going to happen. And so letting them know where you're at. And it goes right into the interview format and any changes that have come with it. So if you were, when you were coming to onsite, if it was going to be a 2-on-1, because you had your team set up like that, and it's now going to be a 1-on-1, letting candidates know that. Because having been a former candidate at multiple TPEs, it's nice to know that, oh, I'm only talking with one person at this time. And it puts you at ease, so that way you know what it looks like, and also puts that candidate at ease. And then also candidate access to your interviews. Just as a reminder, having web conferencing and phone lines available. At a former institution, we used Zoom for all of our interviews prior to onsite one year, and one day our internet went down, or the network was down or something, and we had to switch all of these to phone lines. So making sure you have plan A, plan B, plan C, plan triple C, all of the plans ready, just in case the online platforms don't work. And then one thing that we're getting a ton of questions about from candidates and even employers on Facebook and other social media platforms is your on-campus process information. We would actually love to know what you all are doing. So I'll give an example. At my home institution, we are transitioning to a Zoom-based format. Well, we will rotate, people will rotate in and out of our room at this point. And so the candidate will have one link, but then people will just constantly roll in and roll out throughout the day. So we're still finalizing that at my home institution, but that is what we're moving to, just because if you don't know, the Bay Area is in a little thing called shelter in place. So it is a nice staycation that has been granted to me by my local municipality. So we do not have the necessary ability to bring people on campus at this point, but we still want to have them engage with people as much as face-to-face as we can possible. So if you all know what your on-campus process looks like, or if you're trying to figure out what that could look like, we would love to know that information either way. because then we could help you all with providing any other additional resources or connecting some of our newer employers with seasoned employers who have done the virtual and in-person process before. So our webinar today really just focused on what TPE Virtual is looking like, the scheduling logistics on the website, talking through the different forms or resources that you could use for online platforms. We also just wanted to leave some time for you to ask us any questions. And I also realized that it says picture to the left, but it's not to the left. It's picture to the right. Again, another picture of our TPE on-site team, because we all just been working really hard, and I want to make sure that you know like when we talk about our team, like what we all actually look like. So I think it goes without saying, thank you for your patience and that we're going to be in this together. So I think this is just a time for us to answer any other questions that are either in the chat or as you keep putting them through.
One question that we received that I think is a really good question that I want to answer to make sure everybody hears about it. So we got the question, if we want to do interviews via Zoom, do we have to create individual meetings for each and every interview and send the link to candidates in the notes section? So the answer is both yes and no. And I know Jacob replied, but just to want to make sure that kind of everybody hears this. So what I would suggest, kind of a best practice, and Arian touched on this a little bit with all the different platforms, is to schedule basically a all-day interview. So you could schedule a meeting basically, now and let us know if your technology doesn't allow this. I know like some free versions of Zoom, you only have a 45-minute link. Most academic institutions have educational versions that don't have the time limit. So we can help you out. If you do not have the technology to do it, let us know, and we can help you kind of figure out that technology. As Arian mentioned, there's a lot of other sources that may provide a better option for you. What we do with our Zoom, for example, is we open it at first thing in the morning, so that 8:30 Central Time until 8 p.m. Central Time as one meeting. And then that way it's only one link. So whether it's myself or another interview team member, it often can make it easier because anybody, if I want to have 4 people on my interview team in the meeting, they all have that link the whole day and they just can kind of click it, come and go and leave the meeting. What we would suggest is in your settings, you set it so that candidates cannot join before the host. So if you have back-to-back meetings, they're not logging in when you've got another candidate that is maybe on the call, so that you would then approve them into the meeting. So that's a setting feature I know through Zoom, usually through most video capabilities, but that way you don't have to create a different link for each individual interview. But then that also allows you to make sure you don't have 2 candidates on Zoom at the same time. So they would log in and basically it would just say it's waiting for the host to start, and then you would kind of allow them to join in. So we would recommend either that or just making sure you schedule your interviews with maybe half-hour blocks in between should a candidate log in 10 minutes early, to just make sure their technology is working so that they don't log in during another interview. Other questions? Oh, I see some in there. I'm just reading through them. Yes, so correct. So there's waiting rooms. If you have multiple tables, you can definitely set multiple links. Again, that's really up to you. If you know that you're going to have, if you have multiple tables, which means multiple schedules, if you're going to conduct interviews simultaneously, then you'd want to have multiple links. So, if you are kind of doing table 1 and you have a colleague doing table 2, you might each want to use your own personal meeting room or a different link. if it's, you've got 2 people and 2 people, you know, well, that's partially why we figured it might be easiest for you all to set up your video conferencing yourselves, because you know what you're most comfortable with. But it does make sense that each individual schedule or table would have a different link just for ease sake. Yep. As for scheduling second interviews, it's the same way. You're able to go in and continue to add an interview to a candidate on their schedule. So you make contact with candidates by hitting, when you're in a candidate profile, there's a button that would say contact candidate. Something that is just a good reminder, or might be new for some of you that were new. When they contact you or you contact them, you can contact them through the TPE system with the contact candidate or contact employer button, but it will come to you via email. So whatever the email is that is linked to that job position is where it will come. You can put multiple emails on any one job posting. You just want to separate them with a comma. So if there's 4 members of your interview team, you would definitely want to make sure that you are putting all 4 email addresses in there, for example. That way you would all receive it. And then likewise, if you would contact a candidate, it will automatically send them an email saying that you're requesting an interview. And then if you find that time, you can continue to schedule those second rounds with them. So our kind of interview scheduling desk goes away, and you'll just, you know, we had talked about kind of keeping it open, which we have a couple of solutions for that we're going to implement, but it's still probably faster and easier for you to reach out to that candidate to make sure that they're interested. The way it used to work, when you're physically in person, you would leave them an interview slip. They would get it in their mailbox, right? They would come to our desk. That's how we knew that you had wanted them for the next round interview. We would look up both your schedules and find a time that matched. If we did that sort of through the technology back and forth, it could just take a while. You know, if you contacted a candidate and then they reached out to us to say, yay, College State University wants to interview me for my second round. They're my top choice. I'm so excited, right? Which is what we would often see when they would come to the interview desk. Then we would go into the system, which we could, and schedule you, but that would just take away potential time that we want you to be able to be more efficient in scheduling your interviews. So we just encourage you to continue scheduling second round interviews through the system as well. One of the things that we're going to add to our technology next week is a chat feature. So if you do have questions, we will have a chat feature during most of the time, or at least the prime times that the TPE Virtual is going on. So just like if you went into a website where they have the people that are like, how may I help you? We will also have one of those chat boxes that we are going to launch next week for TPE Virtual. So instead of having the kind of solution station and the interview and registration desk, we will have that chat box, which will be kind of your solution station / interview chat box. I see the question, do you have any best practices or tips and tricks for online interviewing? I'll ask if maybe one of the employer development team members, you probably have some great tips and tricks.
Yeah. In Zoom, there is the ability to have like a neutral background. So before any of y'all jumped on, Jacob had like a beach background, just kind of like test it out. Not calling you out, Jacob, but calling you out. And it was kind of cool, but looking into the features, I'd say the biggest pro tip that I will give anyone is test your technology the day before you start doing all of these, just to make sure microphones work and all of those things work. And one thing that we found successful in practicing is we did a full interview panel with one of our colleagues, just to make sure that, one, they knew their answers, and two, we could make sure the room that we were using was configured properly, so that way there wasn't any echoing or anything else like that. And so that's what I would say is like just practicing. And then like Arian said, making sure you're checking in with your institutional IT folks to see what y'all have access to. So that way your department isn't unnecessarily buying access codes or like anything else like that. So yeah, Arian, do you have anything you want to add to tips or tricks?
I would say treat it also very much like you're seeing the candidate in person, and remembering that like some of the same thing that you wouldn't do in person, you probably don't want to do in front of the candidate on screen. And so treating it as such. So side conversations, and not forgetting that like they can see you just like we can see them. And so the same things that you would plan to do with an in-person interview or being on site at TPE are very similar. You can still start the interview with some excitement. You may not be going to a waiting room and grabbing them, but you can be excited when they answer the phone, giving them that overview, the same thing you would give them if you're sitting across the table from them.
So we've had a few questions about scheduling interviews. So I'm actually going to quickly take a moment, if Tim and Arian and Jacob are okay with it as well, and share my screen and actually walk through that process. I figure that might be helpful. So I'm going to share my screen, and hopefully maybe my panelists can give me a head nod that you see an employer dashboard. Great. So this is what an employer dashboard would look like. So this is my placement exchange, is my institution, and my name is Employer Services. So you would see your first and last name, and then your employer ID, which is your unique ID to your person, your account. So this is what the dashboard looks like. You can see I have two kind of test positions up here. All of my tables, I had multiple tables. So I'm going to, again, go into kind of view, edit, schedule. And here is just to kind of click it up. So I have an interview again with a candidate here. I can edit it in here. I can click on the candidate as an example, just to kind of show you their profile. Since we got asked the question, here's how you can contact that candidate. I've also saved them with a star. So if I'm in there and colleagues are in there, I can star them. So I can say I've starred a few candidates. You can see all of their, if they have put multiple documents in there, they're in there. Candidates have the choice to put different job category preferences, institution types, as well as all of their resume. So wanted to show that really quickly as well. Go back in to my dashboard. Now my computer is going to want to be slow. Okay. So if I want to search a candidate and schedule an interview, there's a few different ways. One of the easiest ways here is to go in and search for candidates. So if I know the candidate's ID number, just like you have a unique ID number, a candidate does as well. So I'm going to try to find Miss Candidate Services, which is my, you should just be able to put their last name and see what pops up. Yep. So just like my pretend employer account is Employer Services. We're really creative here. And our pretend candidate account is first name candidate, last name services. But I can then click onto them again. Oops. I'm going to go back. And oh, yes, no, that was the right place. So I can go in there and I can contact them first to say I want to schedule an interview. And I forgot to mention this is what would pop up. And you can see it has the information. The subject line is always the position name. So if you have more than one position, it's always linked to a position. But then I can mention a message like, I'm interested in interviewing you for a second round. Would you be interested? And then if they say they are, I go back into my schedule, which one of the easiest ways to get there is back through your dashboard on your settings. And if I go into view, edit, schedule, I can go up here, there's view and schedule interview, personal event. At this point, you're not purchasing any more tables or job posts, but it's still on well, you could purchase more job posts if you have a new job. and different information. So I would go into schedule interview, and then this is where I would put in good old candidate services. Make sure that they pop up. I would pick which of my jobs, because you might have more than one job you're interviewing for. So you want to make sure you're giving them the correct position. You might be interviewing the same candidate for multiple jobs. You just want to make sure they know which job they are interviewing for that specific interview. And then you have the choice here to go all the way up to 4th round interview. So I could do 2nd, 3rd. Maybe you did a 1st round interview outside of the TPE scheduling system. That's okay too. So then you would just maybe start with a 2nd round interview. And then you would again pick the time. So we've reminded them that all interviews are in Central Time. You can choose 30 minutes or 60 minutes. You can pick which of the 3 dates. If you want to schedule outside of these times, you can work with the candidate through that contact candidate to find a mutual time that works for both of you, but through the system. So I want to schedule them on Friday. I have lots of tables, so lots of schedules, but I was on, table number 2 earlier. So these would be, they're all open because I haven't booked many, but it would only show, again, the times that you both have available. Now, if you have multiple tables, it will show all of them. So if you know that you had 4 tables initially, but you only want to maintain 1 schedule, I would probably just block all those tables so they don't show up as having times when you could schedule just a hold or a block, or just make sure you're always remembering which interview table you want to schedule on, which is the same as a calendar. So I want to pick 1:00 p.m. end at 1:30. If I thought, oh no, I actually meant to make it a 60-minute interview, I'll change it to 2. I'll hit select. A message will pop up. It's all there. I can write some instructions. So here is where I can also put the interview time. So please plan to meet via Zoom link, right? I might put it in, and then I might write, if you would prefer to meet by phone, let me know, and I would be happy to schedule that. And then I would just hit save, and it's been scheduled. When it gets scheduled, it will automatically show up on your calendar. So now here it is. And it has also not only showed up on the candidate's calendar, but it has also sent them a message. And then when I put in those instructions, it's the same as the notes section. And then if you wanted to change any of the information, you could edit the notes. So hopefully that helps. I know it can be really confusing, so hopefully that helps a little bit. Yes, and only employers can schedule interviews. Candidates do not have access to your schedule. They can indicate that they would like to meet with you. So they could send a contact employer message to say, I'd love the chance to meet with TCU, go Horned Frogs. I think that's the right mascot. And then you could decide if you wanted to interview them or not, but only you have the opportunity to actually place a schedule on their an interview on their schedule. Great question. If you've scheduled interviews for next week, I think however you've already communicated with the candidate, I think at this point, the more communication, the better. Just like you're interviewing with multiple candidates, they are interviewing with multiple schools, most likely, right? That's the smart thing to do. So, I would say if you're making any changes, you definitely want to let them know. If you have already arranged a way to meet with them and it's not in your notes section, I'll leave that up to you. I would say best practice, I would at least try to put it in the notes section, knowing that they might be going from one interview to the next with a little bit of time in between. It saves them the effort of having to sort through their email to figure out how you said you were going to meet with them, which is why the more that can live in this online schedule, the easier it's going to be for not only you, but for the candidates. And we want our candidates to be kind of as relaxed and confident as possible. And as stressed as we are going into this system, I can tell you they're 10 times more stressed trying to find a job right now. Great questions, though. I know we're almost at time. I want to leave some closing thoughts to my fellow TPE colleagues. And I just want to do a shout out to our employer services team and to Arian, who has led as chair, and Tim as co-chair. They have been fantastic with their employer concierge hours and leading our wonderful interns, many of whom are also on this call, and the whole TPE committee. You know, they're the most passionate people I know about TPE, and their biggest reward is to come and see all of this happen in person. And so they're, you know, it's disappointing for them most of all that they don't get to see that. And then they have not only worked really hard, but this is a volunteer role for them as they're working full-time jobs. And as we all know, more than full-time jobs, especially with everything going on right now. So I want to do a shout out to our fabulous employer development team, and Jacob for day 4 on the job has already learned everything he's ever needed to know. Luckily, he comes from a background where he's been involved in TPE in the past. So that has been quite beneficial. So I just want to leave it to our kind of ED team to kind of close out with some final thoughts.
I just want to share that Tim and I are still very much available as you all are going through this process, and continuing to schedule those interviews or connect. Both Tim and I have done this for a while, have connected via Zoom, video conferencing, the wacky type of on-campus interviews. And so if you do have questions as we're navigating TPE Virtual, Tim and I will continue doing those concierge hours and be your continued concierges, both during TPE Virtual and after.
And that's what I was going to say. We will be available during TPE Virtual. So I know as a committee, we're like working through that right now, but there will be one of us available. And then we still have our concierge hours. Mine are tonight from 4 to 8 Pacific Standard Time. Thanks. But no, thank you to you all as employers for really rolling with it. I know you all are getting 1,001 questions on your own campus about what this is going to look like. And really our goal every year is to make sure that as candidates have a really great experience, but that our employers are also getting the same level of service. So really honored and happy to serve the profession in this manner, and like really just excited to see how we can continue to engage y'all.
Great. Well, thank you, everyone. As I just chatted to the group, this will be recorded, and we will continue to send this out as a link to all of our employers, and we will continue to send more information as we know we are also trying to continue to gather ways that we can best support you. So we wish you all the best of luck, not only in the recruitment process, but just on campus and with everything, just everything going on. So we know it's a lot, and we just are here to support you, and thanks for taking the time today to join us. Great. Thank you, everyone.